I'm going to test this workflow. Okay, it's running now. First up is the thumbnail picture, which means the thumbnail for this article. After that comes the entire content of the article. Here's the very short introduction. Then comes the first chapter. Each chapter has its own image. And then comes the content of that chapter. For that chapter, then comes chapter 2, which is chapter 2 title, illustration. Chapter 2 content, conclusion. Below the conclusion section, it also adds a call to action and an about us section, an introduction to the company as well as our offering, our services. Now I'll switch over to my Drive folder. As you can see, it has also automatically created a new folder, with the name of the folder being the title of that blog post, which is AI and Company. Here it is. You can see. I'll open this up for you to take a look. This is the entire content of the blog post in Markdown format. This part is up to you. I have the final post in Markdown and HTML. You can organize it here in whatever format you prefer, so this is the complete blog post. Besides the doc file, all images from the last workflow run were automatically saved in this folder. There you go. So this is the entire image section. Of course, these images are also named according to the title of the post, or the title of that chapter. Hi, hello everyone, I'm back again. In this video, I'm going to demo for you a workflow in n8n. That helps you automatically create long blog posts, and then automatically publish them to your website. So this is the upgraded Pro V2 version. Actually, I've already demonstrated a workflow similar to this. Let's call it version B1. In the tutorial video on creating an AI chatbot on Telegram, and also in the video about DeepSeek R1, I also promised to upgrade this workflow, but only now do I have the time to actually do it. So, what's new in this upgraded Pro V2 version? One major change in this Pro V2 version is that now you can trigger this workflow directly from a spreadsheet in Google Sheets. And here, as you can see, there are a lot of customizations and adjustments that you can make to this workflow. Here we have the seed keyword, the target audience group, the maximum word count, the number of chapters for the blog post, the introduction length, the conclusion length, the style, and the category ID, which you can also change to set the category for that post. Besides that, I've also added a call to action and, a link to the call to action, as well as an introduction about your company and your products or services. Another upgrade that might be valuable for some of you is that all the blog posts and images generated by this workflow will be automatically saved to your Drive. As you can see here, even the name of the folder will be saved as the title of that blog post. When I click here, this will be a doc file containing the entire content of the blog post, as well as all the images created in your workflow. Now I'll demo this workflow. Okay? Here, I've already connected this workflow to my website. After I run this workflow, it will generate a brand new, complete blog post and automatically publish it to my website. Besides that, on Drive, it will also automatically create a folder to store all the content and images from that blog post. Now I'll demo this workflow for you to see. Okay. Now I'll zoom in. So the trigger for this workflow is when I add a new row to the Google Sheets file, and then it will a row, the newest row that I just added. So if I want to run it manually to test the workflow, then I will know which node it's running step by step. But if I activate this workflow, it will run in the background, guys, so I also won't know if it's running or which step it's currently on. So I can activate it manually. So now I'll deactivate this. I'll delete this, and then I'll connect this manual trigger to this setting. Now, I'll open up this settings box for you to see. Okay, so the customizations are in here. Because I'm running it manually, it won't pull data from the spreadsheet file anymore. So I'll need to enter it manually here. The website is dukngwin.cc, and this website doesn't have the HTTPS at the beginning, okay? If it has that, this workflow will throw an error. So, this is also an issue when setting up automation on, meaning everything has to be precise. If there's an error, then the workflow and that automation will stop running. Alright, now moving on to the main keyword. For example, I'll put AI. Application, meaning the application of AI. For the target audience group, I'll set it as CEOs. The maximum content length, the maximum word count, I'll set it to 1000. Since this is just a demo, you know. Number of chapters, I'll probably set it to 2 to keep it quick. But, of course, you can set as many chapters as you want. For the introduction length, I'll set it to 50. The length of the conclusion, I'll also set to 50, just to keep it short. For style, I like a cheerful vibe, so I'll set it to funny. Category ID. This category ID is basically the category for the blog post. You guys, to find the category ID, you need to log into this website. Go to that category. Then look here. Since this is just a demo, I'll post this article in the tutorial category. So you can see that down at the very bottom here. Right near my face, there's a URL that lets me preview it. There's a part that says tag ID equals 403. Not sure if you guys can see it? Well, that's the ID for this category. So I can click here so you can see it more clearly. This is the full. This is the complete link for this category. This is the ID of this category. In my case, it's 403. So I'll go back here and enter 403. As for the call to action, I already have one here, so I'll just copy it in here. Okay, leave this as a string, then the link. For the call to action, I'll link it to the contact page. For company product introduction, I'll also copy and paste them in here manually. As I said, since this is a manual demo, I'm adding these manually. When you guys run the workflow, the trigger for it is actually this spreadsheet. So every time I add a new row, it will automatically run this workflow. Alright, so the configuration part for this workflow is done. I'll test this workflow now. Okay, it's running. Here, the first step here is that it will check to see if the input data is okay. After that, the next step is it will create the structure of the blog post. It will have several chapters or something, depending on what you require. Then it will create a drive folder, with the name being the blog post's title. Next, it will write each chapter one by one. Chapters, it writes each wait node. For example, if I use an API that has a rate limit, I'll need to add a certain waiting period for each API call, so I can add it here. Currently, I've set it to 5 seconds, but depending on the rate limit, you can set it. For example, after every 5 minutes or 1 hour, then make the next API call. Next, I also replaced the node for the model, the AI model, with OpenRouter, so that I have more options, whichever model I want to use. After writing content for each chapter, it will then generate images for each chapter. Once it has text and images for each chapter, it will combine them into a complete article, then add an introduction, a conclusion, and a call to action to create the final article. So here, I also made a change by adding 2 versions, so that I have the final article in Markdown format, and then I convert it to HTML. After that, I save the content of the final article into a docx file. Once I have the final article, I'll publish it on WordPress. Okay? I have to publish it on WordPress. I'll create the thumbnail image. This thumbnail image is kind of like the final step, meaning I have to have the article on WordPress first, then I create the image, and only then can I assign this thumbnail image to that article. So this image step, the step of creating the thumbnail image, is the last step. After that, I have the published article. I have the thumbnail image. Then at this point, I'll attach this thumbnail image to the article. After that, there are also a few more steps, like updating the metadata for that image, then setting a short summary to serve the purpose of SEO. And finally, I'll have the finished article. So the result has been returned already. This is a blog post that has been created and published, and this is exactly that blog post. If I switch over to my website, okay, now I'll refresh, then I'll see the new post right here. This is the new post, AI and CEO, a match made in Silicon Heaven. Alright, I'll click here to show you guys. This is the thumbnail picture, which is the thumbnail for this article. Then comes the entire content of the post. Here's the very short introduction, and then comes the first chapter. Each chapter has its own image. And then comes the content of that chapter, of that section. After that is chapter 2, which is the title of chapter 2, and then the illustration for chapter 2. Next is the content of chapter 2, and finally, the conclusion. Below the conclusion section, it also adds a call to action, and the About Us section, an introduction about the company as well as our offering, our own. Now I'll switch over to my Drive folder, and you can see that it has also automatically created a new folder, with the name of the folder being the title. The title of that blog post is AIC, and it was just created. And here it is. At the time I'm making this video, guys, here is AIC. You can see. I'll open this up for you to check it out. So this is Content Blog Post Markdown. This part is up to you. I have the final post in Markdown and HTML, so save it in whichever format you prefer. In my workflow, I currently have it set by default to save the post in Markdown format. So this is the entire blog post. Besides the doc file, all the images generated during the last workflow run were also automatically saved into this folder. So this is the entire image section. These images, of course, are also named according to the title of the post or the title of the chapter. Here, there are 3 images, and this is the thumbnail image, and 2 illustration images for the 2 chapters. The number of images depends on the number of chapters. For example, if I write 5 chapters, there will be 5 images, and 1 thumbnail image, making 6 in total. And the content of the blog post is also automatically saved here. The special thing about this workflow is that it's 100% automated. After you import it, you just need to activate it so it listens for the trigger of adding a new row in the Google Sheets file. The activation part is also very simple. Through the interface of a Google spreadsheet, you'll have a lot of customization options, from topic, target audience, category, word count, sections, introduction and conclusion length, and the writing style. Additionally, you can also add a call to action and an introduction about the company and product. After the workflow finishes running, you'll have a complete article that is automatically published on the website. Here, since this is a demo, I'm publishing the blog post directly to the website. Of course, in reality, you should set it as a draft, so you can review it one last time and see if anything changed or edited. After finishing the article and publishing it on the website, blog post and images will be automatically saved to Google Drive. You won't have to worry about losing your post or any content, besides the major upgrades, as I just explained. In this Pro V2 version, I have also made a lot of updates, from small tweaks to bigger changes that I can't even remember all of them. For example, with the nodes related to AI models, I've switched over to OpenRouter to make switching AI models faster. So we just need to go in here and make the change to the model that we want to use. I've also added a wait node for when you need to run a loop to deal with rate limits. For example, if the API only allows 5 or 6 calls per minute or something like that. When I add this wait node, I can set it so that it will run the next time. After how long, like 5 seconds, after 60 seconds, or after a minute, a day, whatever you want. Another small change is in the part where we fetch internal links on this website. I've also added a limit. Here I'm setting it to 20 to get a maximum of 20 recent posts. In case the website has too many posts, it won't overflow the context window of that prompt. So those are a few changes that I can remember. So I'm updating you guys right here because so many people have asked. From now on, I'll also be selling these workflows. If you're interested, you can find the purchase link in the video description below. Next, in this section, I'll share a few notes for those of you who decide to buy this workflow from me. First, regarding some general notes, the first thing is, this workflow is suitable for people who already have basic knowledge of n8n, know how to use it, and are able to tinker on their own. If you don't know anything about n8n yet, then you should watch the tutorial videos that I've already made. Second, after you import this workflow, you'll need to connect it to the AI models, accounts, or the tools used in this workflow. After that, it will run according to the default settings that I've configured. However, to optimize the workflow for your own use case or your specific business, you'll need to know how to optimize prompts and optimize the workflow itself. Third, when testing, you should use cheaper models like Mini or Flash for image generation, especially for the image generation part. You should use low-cost models to generate low-resolution images to save costs. First, I want to check to see if the workflow runs smoothly. Once it runs, then I move on to the next step, which is optimization. And when I'm ready, when I turn on that workflow for production, then I'll choose the highest quality models, the very best ones. Fourth, by default in my workflow, I usually set the AI model to OpenAI GPT-4o because it runs very reliably. There are a lot of places in the workflow that require the returned result to be in JSON, following a predefined structure. In my experience, GPT-4o handles response formatting for JSON and structured JSON output very well. In case you switch to another AI model and the workflow fails, try running it with ChatGPT-4o first to see if it works. When I tested with some AI models like Terminal or Flash, the workflow often failed. Because with each AI model, the response it returns is a little bit different. Some responses won't match the features I requested. And even some models don't support returning results in JSON format or don't support this tool package. Fifth, another issue, also related to the AI model, is the context window. For example, with the GPT-4o model, in theory, the context window of this model is 128K, but in reality, it can be trimmed down quite a lot, not reaching 128K. And with some nodes, the prompt might even process both the input and output from previous loops or even from earlier nodes. So, it's really important that we know how to optimize the prompt, both to save resources and to avoid errors. Sixth, errors can happen for a lot of reasons. From this AI model, from your server, hosting n8n, or from n8n itself, then from your browser or your personal computer. And if you customize the workflow, it could be that the changes you make also cause the workflow to break. There are even situations where the workflow runs today, but doesn't run tomorrow, because of some updates, or maybe it works at home. But when you get to the office, the workflow doesn't run anymore. Personally, there was a time when I built an app, and when I ran it at home, it worked. But when I went to a coffee shop, it didn't work anymore. It wasn't until much later that I realized the API I used in that app had blocked the IP range of the coffee shop. So my app couldn't call the API, and that's why it didn't work. I'm giving this example so you can see that technical errors, they're really tricky, guys. They come in all shapes and forms. You never know what to expect. In the case where the workflow doesn't run, before you ask, try running it in an incognito window without any plugins enabled. And if you're using Chrome, try a different browser, like Safari, for example, or if you can't run it on one computer, then try it on another computer. Borrow another computer to try it out. And if it doesn't work at your company, then take it home and see if it works there. Seventh and lastly, for those of you who have purchased or have access to this workflow, please do not share this workflow of mine with anyone else, and absolutely do not resell this workflow to others without my permission, okay? A few days ago, I noticed someone reselling, meaning selling again, a workflow that was exactly the same as mine. You guys, I also don't know how to handle this kind of situation. I'm actually quite sad and disappointed. A lot of effort and brainpower went into building these kinds of workflows. So in a way, I feel really demotivated. In the long run, I might lose motivation or lose interest to share knowledge or create products that have value. Because if I create something and then someone just copies it and sells it for a cheaper price, then I really have no reason to keep going. So, if any of you are thinking about doing that and are watching this video of mine, please keep this in mind for me, okay? Next, here are some notes specifically for the workflow. WordPress Blog Automation Pro V2 with SEO topic and activation via Google Sheets. Just like the name of this workflow suggests, it only works with WordPress websites. Just so you know, guys, if your website isn't WordPress, then this workflow simply won't run. Secondly, the initial data entry. The initial input for this workflow must be correct, formatted, and structured. For example, the website must be correct. It has to be in the correct format, like, for example, dpwin.cc without HTTPS beginning. If website format isn't like this, then workflow also won't run or it'll throw an error, so you really need to pay attention to this part. Third, the trigger for the workflow is adding a new row in Google Sheets. And currently, As far as I remember, I set it by default to check every 5 minutes, so this trigger isn't very flexible. There could be situations where the workflow doesn't get triggered, or while I'm entering input data into the spreadsheet file, the workflow might run after 5 minutes. So, in cases where the workflow doesn't run, you'll need to check again or change the way it's triggered. For example, you could set it to trigger automatically every day at 9 a.m. and take the topic as the last row in the Google Sheet file. Actually, Google Sheets isn't really the best solution out there, but it's the most common tool that everyone uses. I'm creating this version automated workflow with Google Sheets trigger. I might add Airtable or Notability, which are two tools similar to Google Sheets, but much more powerful. And I could also upgrade this workflow to a whole new level. Fourth, this workflow will also be suitable for content in the SEO format, optimized for keywords, and doesn't require the latest information, you guys. Coming up, I'll also try to release another version, also automated, blog automation, but it will have the added feature of online research, so it can pull in the latest information about topics that have just happened recently, recent events, or topics that are time sensitive, that are sensitive to timing. Alright,